What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caparoso, joined as always by Connor Rogers. Little Tuesday night drop with War Room hitting tomorrow AM, which is a special 3-round mock simulator. Connor, how you doing? How you feeling? We're doing mock drafts on the feed tomorrow. In this episode, we're answering a bunch of Discord questions on a million things. So we're going to let you riff a little bit on Jets Media Day on Monday. But how we doing?
Good. Listen, we've had our fill of quotes this week from the brass, whether it's Robert Saleh down there. It's such a funny environment. Everybody eating
It is.
breakfast, sitting
Yeah.
together. It is. You're like every time it comes up this time of year, it's kind of jarring when you're like, wait, where are they? What are they doing? Why is this happening? And then you settle in and you hear from Saleh, you hear from Douglas, you hear from Woody. And it's I don't know, it's just a very interesting time of year where listen, and the Jets, probably feel good about themselves in front of the media right now as they had a good free agency. They know this is a massive draft, and we're going to try to solve some of those problems through our own version of the draft in the War Room video, which is really cool. And it's just there's never a dull moment, even when they aren't making signings right now.
What was your number one takeaway from the medley of quotes we got between the holy trinity of the Jets leadership at the moment? What was the one thing that caught your attention and stuck in your head?
I was actually pretty surprised how they seemed to regret how the Bryce Huff situation went down. I was very surprised. I actually appreciate that approach rather than just the GM speak, coach speak, organization speak of, hey, and they always like to do the can't pay everyone thing, but it felt like a time where, specifically Douglas looked at it as, Salah seemed like really disappointed that they lost him. And Douglas seemed like he knew where it went wrong, is that it didn't get done. It had nothing to do with the free agency period, but the fact that it didn't get done in advance like John Franklin Myers did, right? So that surprised me. And it's about owning and learning from, things that you thought could have went a lot better. With Woody, I mean, obviously the number one is Woody talking about Zach Wilson, where it's just like, how many times have they told this kid that they're trading him already, and there's just no way you could have him come back. It's not even fair to him to have him walk back in that building. It's just I do, and I don't know about this. I do find it interesting if they actually do have trade offers on the table, because when you look at what all of the failed quarterbacks have gone for this offseason, you would think Zach Wilson at most, from a team that loved him in the draft, would offer a 2025 conditional seventh. I mean,
that does not seem to be the case at the moment.
And not take on the money. Like the Jets would really like that $5 million off the books this year. They're going to eat dead money no matter what with him. But so, yeah, that's probably one of those ones where when Woody talks about it, like Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh see it on Twitter later, or he just hear it and they're just like, oh man, like all the good vibes around this team. And somehow Zach Wilson is still a topic. And to be fair, these guys all don't control what they're asked about. But yeah, it is that's probably the biggest topic. And you know what? If that's the biggest topic, that's probably a good thing. The Jets actually have a starting five on the offensive line penciled in. I guess the last thing, and I'm really reacting to way too many quotes here for a bunch of men in Hawaiian and polo shirts down in nice
eating
weather.
a continental breakfast.
Yeah, eating the going to the waffle making machine hungover and just trying to figure out how much to pour in whatever substance that is you pour into the waffle making machine with your whipped cream and strawberries. I mean, I guess would be they're really tempering the timeline and expectations of Mike Williams, and that is yet another thing. Before they signed Mike Williams, I'm like, we got to relax here. Like, guys that come off an ACL at wide receiver, you need time. Like, it's the one proven that you're not going to come in and be an NFL number one wide receiver, week one. So I think that's good that they have that awareness, because it tells you they are going to be aggressive for a pass catcher in this draft at some point of the draft. So that was definitely a notable one for me as well, because the last thing you want to do is have Mike Williams full throttle in August, and then you get to October and, oh man, like Mike Williams is sore. Tyron Smith isn't playing. Like all the old guys are sore and tired. That's just The Jets aren't playing for September and October. The Jets are finally playing for something more when it gets real cold outside.
So my two thoughts, like on Zach Wilson, I feel like this probably ends like day 3 of draft weekend with like a weird pick swap where like the Jets like kind of like go down in the draft a little bit and they just like get rid of him to a team at that point. It was basically like not giving up anything really. Maybe they're getting like a slightly better day 3 pick. Like, so he's basically traded for the smallest amount humanly possible or cut shortly after the draft. So this doesn't drag anywhere near OTAs or
7th round swap
camp. Something like that. Like the Jets like moved down 11 spots in the 7th round to get rid of Zach Wilson to, whatever team. Because you just can't have this carry on anymore. And
you can't have this. Should be our next T-shirt.
I can't talk about this guy anymore, unfortunately. I do want to focus back in on the pass catchers. And we got a question from Captain Kang in the Discord. With all the Bowers versus offensive line versus receiver at pick 10 fighting going on, what is Connor thoughts on first-year tight ends not having a huge impact and needing ramp-up time for a year? Seems like a lot of first-round tight ends in recent years haven't done much, or is that just a fantasy football thing? I'll spin this into a broader Bowers question where maybe it's just Jets Twitter, but it feels like his stock is like dropping a bit. And like there's more stuff more holes being poked in his game. Can he win on contested catches? Is he going to be able to break tackles at the next level? Is he big enough? Where is your head at with Bowers and his prospective value at 10? And like, where do you think he's going?
Well, here's a good time for a little promo. Let's read. I already wrote up Brock Bowers in the draft guide. So
there we go.
We have like I feel like
early spoiler. I love it.
We have like 60 to 70 reports filed, signed, sealed, and delivered, and just cranking every single day. All right, so Bowers 6'3 and an eighth, 243. It's smaller for a tight end. Here's the summary. The SEC Freshman of the Year in 2021 and Mackey Award winner for Nation's Best Tight End in 2022 and 2023. Bowers is a special prospect at the position. His mother was an All-American softball player, and his dad was a 2-time All-Big West center, both at Utah State. Bowers' athleticism, reliable hands, and fearless style of play makes him a threat from any spot on the field. He can take a manufactured short area touch and run through the defense, but can also high point the ball on deep throws over smaller defenders. College defenses did not have an answer for him in the red zone with and without the ball. His effort as a blocker is tremendous despite being undersized on the line of scrimmage. Whichever team drafts him needs to realize they are bringing in a dynamic offensive weapon to move around rather than a traditional inline tight end. He should be a top 5 player at his position quite quickly in the NFL. The 3 weaknesses I wrote, because our reports go deeper than just the summary this year, can be over-aggressive lunger when run blocking, lacks traditional tight end size, and has short arms, 37th percentile arm length. Dealt with injury in 2023 that slowed down his impact. The player comp I've said on the show before is George Kittle. So I think when you package all of that, well, let me answer the question because it's a good one. Because as someone who deals in the fantasy football world, August to December, and the draft world every month, it's a funny question because it's very spot on, but it's also funny to ask it now because Sam Laporta just went nuclear on the league year one. Now, to be fair to that situation, it's an outlier because Ben Johnson's not only a great offensive coordinator, Laporta came out of the Iowa program where they did do some creative things with him, but it's still Iowa. And he's a really, really good athlete. Usually the case with tight ends that are good early is that they were a bigger part of their college offense than your traditional tight end. Like how it works is basically like Trey McBride at Colorado State. He was their offense. And then by year 2 of his NFL career, McBride was an awesome tight end. Like he was tight ends are not featured in college. Bowers was as a freshman by Todd Monken. He was the SEC Freshman of the Year. Then as a sophomore, he was the best tight end in the country. So Bowers comes in knowing how to be the guy already. Now, if you just draft him and say, okay, you're on the line of scrimmage, like we don't do anything creative with you to move you around or anything like that, well, that's different, right? That's a different scenario that then it's on you. So I do think he's the outlier that can be a big-time producer in those first 2 years, but it's a spot-on question that's not the norm. And that's what, like Kyle, okay, this is a perfect example, right? Let's pull up Kyle Pitts at Florida. Kyle Pitts was a guy that you loved the potential, and he was really good for 2 years at Florida. He did have over 600 and over 700 yards, but Bowers caught like 30 touchdowns in college. Pitts caught 17 those last 2 years. He didn't do things in a refined way. I think he was just a really, really unique player at the position that you thought would translate. And to be fair to Pitts, it's not his fault how things have gone at the NFL. And he did have 1,000 yards as a rookie. We do often forget that. So yeah, I think that there's a very realistic world where Bowers is an outlier and is an instant producer at the position, but that's not the norm.
It's, with him, how do you utilize him? Is he really your like number 2 or 2B receiver in the passing game? Is he being moved around? Is he a big slot? Is he getting to line up on the outside? Are the Jets imaginative enough to maximize him in that way? And I don't think necessarily like Hackett and Carter are or Downing are, but with Rodgers, you feel like he would be able to maximize that kind of player. And there is enough long-term ceiling where this guy should be an all-pro and he's going to have the chance to play with a great quarterback right away. So it's become one of the more like weird, divisive draft things. And these things happen because it's a long wait to draft. And there's a lot of strong opinions on both sides. For me, like, I don't know if it's something I'm standing on the table for, but I'm sure as hell not disappointed if they get him because they need more juice at the tight end position. They need guys who can score touchdowns and they just need more pass catchers. And it doesn't matter where they line up at initially, whether they're classified as a tight end or a receiver. I mean, really going at this point right now, as excited I am about Mike Williams, the Jets' number 2 pass catcher is probably going to be Breece Hall next year behind Garrett Wilson. And then you're going to figure out what you can get from Williams as that downfield threat and explosive player in the red zone. You add Bowers because, Odunze is gone and you're not as high in Brian Thomas. And you don't necessarily love the offensive line combination left. And you're going to sign Bakhtiari as an extra backup after the draft. I think Jet fans with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback would learn to love Bowers very quickly. And I think if he is still on the board at 10 and they don't take him, he's not going to last very long, whether that's someone coming up to get him. Because a lot of people,
15.
Yeah, I think like yourself, have him as a top 5-6 player in the draft and a guy that you don't throw out a comparison to George Kittle, likely. And if he could be, 96% of George Kittle, even if we consider that like somewhat disappointing, like it's worth it to have that kind of mismatch. And you see consistently the value of having tight ends who are mismatches on teams who are consistently very successful. The Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, there's plenty of the Niners, there's plenty of examples of teams utilizing this. Now, another interesting quote I thought from Saleh that was very direct, that they're obviously adding another quarterback after saying Tyrod Taylor had elite locker room presence, which got a chuckle out of it. Just like a funny quote. Elite locker room presence, whatever that means exactly. So we got a question from Champ2433. With the Jets making it pretty clear they are looking at a late round QB flyer, who are some guys to keep an eye on? I like Pratt, but he may go pretty early.
That's fair.
Love some other guys to look at and maybe some Jets-centric ones.